Our first panel today will be a presentation and discussion on defining training needs for the next generation of racing's workforce. Our panel will be led by Remi Bellocq, along with Doug Bowling and Jamie Richardson. Since October 2011, Remi has served as Executive Director and currently as Equine Industry Workforce Liaison for the Bluegrass Community and Technical College Equine Studies Program. And this is formerly known as the North American Racing Academy, or NARA, that Remi and some of us, and in particular, Chris McCarron, got started years ago. And the goal of the BCTC Equine Science Program is to prepare students for care, training, and riding of racehorses. Since it began in 2006, BCTC Equine has become a key equine industry workforce provider, offering 1-year certificate and 2-year associate degrees for those who seek careers in horse racing and breeding. BCTC Equine has helped graduates find employment with top U.S. trainers such as Todd Pletcher, Kenny McPeak, Graham Motion, and Joe Sharp, and at top breeding farms and training centers such as TaylorMade and WinStar. Prior to his work with BCTC Equine, Remi served as the Executive Director and CEO of the National Horsemen's Benevolent and Protective Association, after spending 18 years working in various management positions at racetracks across the country. Remi also enjoys cartooning, a pastime he inherited from his father, Peb Bellocq, who I'm sure you've all seen over the years is a noted cartoonist for the Daily Racing Form. A native New Yorker, Remi is a 1984 graduate of the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program and currently lives in Lexington with his wife, Bridget, and son, Alex. And Remi can tell you exactly how to get there, and we might see it if we go to the Derby Museum for their film. The mural that his dad has done over on the grandstand area of Churchill Downs. It's phenomenal. Our other panelists are Jamie Richardson is the superintendent here at Churchill Downs. And prior to working at Churchill, he was at Oaklawn and the Maryland Jockey Club. And Doug Bowling is the superintendent at Charlestown Racings. So, Remi?
Dan and I go back a really long ways. When I first went out to the University of Arizona, I used to actually gallop some of his quarter horses at Rio Park back in the day. And so, you know, we have a lot of fond memories from that. Again, my name is Remi Bellocq, and I'm with the Bluegrass Community and Technical College. Mick tasked me with working on possible solutions for future workforce training program specializing in this particular field of track maintenance, and to hopefully provide all of you with a wider, deeper bench, if you will, for recruiting future workers. Part of that process allowed me to look at a couple of key issues. Would this be best served with a degree program, an associate's degree program, or 4-year, or perhaps a certificate program, which could be a shorter time frame. So I'm going to do a quick 4 or 5 panel PowerPoint presentation to show you what kind of where I've come to as far as a recommendation. And then if Doug and Jamie can then come up, and then I'll have a couple of prompts to start the discussion. So let me make sure okay, so let's see here. There we go. So the overall goal that we talked about was, due to high industry demand, the development of a customized workforce training certification program, which could serve on a national basis or even an international basis, which would be designed to provide next generation employees with the competencies necessary to succeed in the field of racetrack maintenance. I mixed in a couple of cartoons too, just to keep things fun and, different. The key players here were, of course, Mick, who approached me about doing this presentation, myself. I also think it's important that, as far as a key player here, is the Track Surfaces Advisory Group, HISA, of course, and of course, all the racetrack superintendents and track managers or track operators in the country. I formed a working group at BCTC, at our college, to look at this not just from a racing perspective, but from a community college perspective. What would they do if we were Toyota or another company? How would they approach this? And I found this to be good, because I think in order for us to expand our talent pool to draw the best students possible into this particular field, we also have to think of outside the box. There might be a lot of students out there at BCTC or at another school who grew up on a farm and might be pursuing, another field. And then if we raise awareness about this particular approach, we might be able to draw some folks into our industry who have all the skills that we're looking for, except for, knowing about horses and racetracks. So we can teach them that. I think it's important that we think more broad-based. People on our working group were Melanie Williamson, Dr. Williamson, Dean of our Innovation Department, Dr. Tipton, Head of our Workforce and Economic Development Department, Jeff Heron, who's the Academic Dean in the Trades Division, Tracy Knowles, who teaches a soils class, Dixie Kendall, who is our BCTC Equine Studies Program coordinator, and myself. Competencies in 3 key areas are that we kind of whittled everything down to. This might be obvious, but it bears repeating. And in discussing this with Mick as well, basic horse handling. We have an equine studies program. We teach an introduction to racehorse care lab at BCTC over at the Thoroughbred Center barn, where we have off-the-track racehorses we keep in training. I think this is going to be an important part of this process. Maybe not as in-depth as a full semester class we do, but getting a lot of these students hands on horses so they understand, for example, the key importance of their job and the health and safety of the horses and riders. An understanding of the horse racing industry, I think, is vital. Knowing how the racetracks operate, how purses are generated, regulation, what HISA, the role of HISA nowadays, and how a track operates. Of course, heavy equipment operation. That goes without saying. Now, at our college, we offer CDL classes for students for a commercial driver's license. And we also offer on other campuses an actual course on the operation of motor graders. But, and I'll get more into that in a second. And then a basic understanding of soil testing and that role in today's racing industry. The proposal, what we kind of came up with was the creation of a customized workforce certificate training program. We do the same thing with training students who want to go work for Toyota Manufacturing near in Georgetown. This is creating a specific certificate-based program that the competencies are focused on exactly what you're looking for. And I think that might be the best approach. So it wouldn't be for credit, it would be a certificate program, but we would have specific competencies all the way through, so that, when we evaluate a student, they must tick off all those boxes to make sure they've mastered all those competencies. Strategic alliances, I think it's going to be important if we build a program that we have an alliance. And so Jim Pendergast and I talked about this. The concept would be that as opposed to having classes over at a campus like BCTC, we create a campus at a Keeneland or a thoroughbred center where they would have access to horses for the hands-on training, track equipment, and they would have the opportunity for hands-on work. And then duration. We looked at a lot of different options. I think we talked about the quicker the better. So what we're thinking about is like a 1 semester or a 15 to 16 week program. That would allow the students to come in and get plenty of time to master all these different disciplines. We offer spring from mid-January to mid-May, or fall, mid-August to mid-December. Requirements. In our thinking, under the basic horse handling area, we offer, I'll go down to the bottom here, we offer a class called Equine Studies 130, the Introduction to the Horse Racing Industry. That would cover how the industry operates and works and all. Hands-on, we would either have the students take part of our Equine Care Lab, which is a full semester class, or to create a more streamlined horse handling type of class or portion of this program. And by the way, I'll send this whole presentation out to you all through email, so you don't have to read everything. As far as the heavy equipment operation in a racetrack setting, our recommendation would be to take the competencies from 2 classes that our college offers: motor grader, loader operator, which is HEO, heavy equipment operation 133, and preventive maintenance lab class. Taking the competencies from those 2 classes and using that ones that apply the most to this specific environment, that would require us to hire an adjunct lecturer, which would be part of this program, finding the one individual who would be able to take those competencies, put them together into one class, and be able to teach that class during that 16-week period. And then also to work with Mick on taking these students to the testing lab and give them a familiarity about that process, so they can, while they're in Lexington, take advantage of all these opportunities. And that's my presentation. And then I'll open it up. If Jamie and Doug could come on up, I will get things started with dialogues to see what you all think about this approach, the do's and don'ts, the advantages, disadvantages, and all. So guys, come on up. First of all, thank you both very much, and appreciate you inviting me here to do this very important panel. So I'd like to start things off with a key question that, when we work with BCTC. So name the top 3 challenges you all face with recruitment and retention of your workforce. Let's start it off with that, and then we can kind of drill down from there. So Jamie, if you can start.
So we're very lucky here because I have year-round employees, and I know some racetracks struggle with seasonal employees. So that's a much bigger struggle. I think you're the same way, Doug. Most of you guys you run year-round. So that's a big help. Racetracks would struggle with seasonal employees, and then at the end of the year have to, lay them off and, hope they get them back or train a whole nother workforce the following year. I've got a great crew here. I've been blessed. They make a decent wage. I've got some terrific guys that work on the crew. I can't say enough good about them. I just hired a guy about 1.5 years ago, and the guy's like a sponge. We just need more people. That's when they want to learn. That makes our job easy. You've got to have people that want to learn and want to do a good job. and I've got a lot of great guys, but I'm just bringing up this one gentleman because he's learning everything, but he wants to drive water truck. He wants to drive tractor. He wants to, handle horses. He wants to do everything. And he, he came with no experience in any of those fields. So, guys like him, I'll take them all day long. I think you and I spoke this morning about conscientiousness. I mean, when you're doing a racetrack, as you guys all know here, you send a guy out to drive a water truck. It's not always the same speed all the way around the track. It's, you've got shade, you've got places the wind hits more, you speed up, slow down, turn off, turn on sometimes, and keeping a track even. So there has to be an element of conscientiousness there that somebody wants to do a good job and they're going to try and give you every effort. And that's huge. And, that's when you find those people, you hold on to them for dear, with dear life, because, you can't, they're hard to replace. So,
for us in Charlestown, we have the same year-round racing schedule. So we do offer year-round work employment for folks. The challenge that we have with most of them is pay scale, because we're in an area where the 4 richest counties in the United States. So as far as pay, I'm not sure what Jamie pays here, but our pay scale probably is more equivalent to landscape companies. So when we pick and choose folks that come for employment, a lot of times they're not, they just don't have the experience. As a matter of fact, a few that we've just recently hired didn't know how to use a rake or a shovel. So those are the kind of challenges that you face. You have to train, and you have to spend a lot of time with them. And then about the time you get them trained, a year later, year and a half later, they realize they're worth more money and they go somewhere else.
So I'm gonna have to add raking and shoveling to the class requirements for our program.
We seem to do more of that than anything else.
Along those lines, my next question, beyond operating heavy equipment and of course, understanding racing and horses and all that, what would be the top 3 other skills that you'd be looking for in an employee beyond those 2 basic things? Like we call that soft skills, like communication, being able to, talk to, other skills beyond the obvious ones. What would be your choices on that?
Oh, you have to be an experienced operator, first of all. That's one thing you want to look for. Desire, conscientiousness, the desire to do a job properly. So many people, they just want to once over, and we went through the motion, but they actually didn't do the job. Mm-hmm. So conscientiousness is a big thing. Other than that, just a desire to want to work and work extra hours.
Yeah, I mean, we all know the racetracks is it's a lot of hours. I mean, our guys start at 6:30. Actually, guys come in at 4 o'clock to open the track up. I've got 3 guys that come in and get the track ready. They'll put a load of water on, harrow the track up. I've got guys showing up at 6:30, and later on this month, we have a night racing. I've got guys that'll be here from 4 o'clock in the morning. Now they'll get out a little earlier than everybody else, but the last race runs at 10 after 11 that night. Thank God we don't do that all the time. I know you do. But Thursday nights, evenings, we run at 5. The last race runs at 8. Still they're long days. Communication is a big skill too. I mean, if a guy sees something on the racetrack, whether it's wet, dry, deep, hard, guys need to be able to communicate to you and tell you, you might not want to hear it, but hey, I saw this out there. You might want to check it out. So that's huge. And that's just being attentive and again, caring about what you're doing.
Raise your hands if anybody has any question. I'll try to take a look or just shout out and let me know. One of the things I think it would be important about a program like this, and I know I spoke with Jim about this a little bit and Mick, is that by having a 15, 16-week training program, it allows us to kind of be in the screening process, if you will. So we get a preview of that individual's work ethic. Do they show up every day for class? Are they conscientious? We can kind of, be an evaluator of the talent pool that would graduate from this program or get a certificate, as opposed to racetracks or track superintendents having to do that on their own, like with internships or on-the-job training or things like that. How much value do you put on something like that, plus or minus? Because if you hire somebody on and are doing on-the-job training and it just doesn't work out, well, then you've spent a lot of time and money, and as opposed to another entity like a school or a college.
So I think if people can have a relationship with you, Remi, and you can maybe point these people in directions, Jim will probably get, he'll get the pick of the litter, because, he's right there and, you guys are working together. But no, seriously, I mean, if somebody, maybe they want to go work for Glenn in New York, or they want to go to California, they want to go to Pennsylvania, Maryland, all the places that we have racetracks, that you could be a huge asset. If I've got two gentlemen that work on my turf crew here that worked for my brother-in-law at Saratoga, and Robbie Minton called me and he said, hey, the one came down at first and then his brother came with him, and he wanted to move back to Kentucky. He had worked with horses, so he had been here in Kentucky, and he just didn't like New York, and I hired him on, and I mean, one of the best things I ever did. I mean, and then he brought a couple of more guys, and I mean, I've got a great turf crew here. Can't say not enough good about them, and they had already. I knew they were good because when Robbie said, no, this is a good guy, the first one, I knew that was a huge, those were big words when Robbie said that. So that, but same thing with you. If you call and say, hey, I've got a good guy, he wants to, maybe, I don't know if most of them are going to be here in Kentucky, but maybe they want to go to New York, or they want to go to, Florida, and so, if you have a relationship with racetracks, that could be great.
Sure. Having a relationship with all the tracks would help each and every one of us. Again, as Jamie said, I think they're going to get the pick of the crop here and other racetracks as well, because everyone wants to start off at the 1, 2, 3 racetrack in the country.
But you've got the benefit. You're one of the few jobs where they do get year round.
Yeah, that
benefits.
Yeah, we do
So
offer the year round.
So following up with that, one of the big topics that we had was, of course, pay, career pathway opportunities. If you get a young student coming in, a lot of times what we find with even in our equine studies program is you have to convince their parents that there's a career pathway for especially a young student coming in. And so that's another important part of this, is that whether it's at Charlestown or at Churchill Downs or New York, is say, this is where you're going to start and this is where you can go over the years as a career pathway type of thing. That's very attractive to a lot of potential talent, down the road. The other thing on what you just talked about, and something we discussed, is the concern of poaching, right? And not just one track with another, but if one of we train a student in this program, them getting poached by a contractor, landscaping company, or what have you. The idea then it came up that, for example, if Glenn in New York has a candidate that really wants to work on his crew, but isn't trained yet, the idea of putting that student under an apprenticeship contract, like in the old days, where that student then would come to Kentucky for the training, but then would have to go back and work in New York for the next 1.5 to 2 years as part of the agreement. I think that has a lot of merit because it creates an opportunity for a track to fund the training for potential candidate and have that candidate come back to them. So that's another thing to think about. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that would be awesome to send them around to each and every track.
Okay.
Because we all, I think, take care of our racetracks a little bit differently, even though it's the basic function. There are things that you do different at each and every racetrack, as Jamie said, with the shade, sometimes direction of the wind, the direction of the rain, so we always end up with like one side of the racetrack being wetter than the other just because of the direction of the rainstorm.
Yeah, and I mean, I was talking to Javier earlier, Baraja, and we were talking, and he sent guys down to work with Pedro in at fairgrounds, and I mean that's great. I think that especially these seasonal tracks, if you've got a guy that's good and wants to continue in that field, Pedro's probably always looking for good help. I know Javier has done that. George Moncrief moves around to different tracks, moves north and south depending on the time of year, and probably the same thing, always looking for good help. So I think there's a lot of, potential there to move guys around, and the more places you see, everything we do here isn't necessarily the way you should do it somewhere else. I mean, Jim does things different at Keeneland. I mean, we're probably fairly similar, but and then you go to those smaller tracks and, guys, I mean, some of those superintendents are ingenious because they have a smaller budget, but they still do a heck of a job.
And then touching again on the apprenticeship idea, the concept, we all automatically think about apprentice jockeys and how it used to be back in the 30s and 40s where they were under contract for 2 years and then released. But apprenticeships are a big thing in the US right now. And there's a lot of federal funding for apprenticeship programs that are, national on scale. Think of apprentice electricians, plumbers, those kind of workforce training programs are something that we might also look into as well, because then you can find a potential worker from your jurisdiction, send them away for the training and have them come back and work for you for a couple of years. Let's see, the other questions I had here. I want to go back and also touch on what we're talking about before, the soft skills that you find are important. And by soft skills, we mean interpersonal communication. What we find nowadays, even at the community college level, is that students are so afraid of communicating face to face with other people, because of social media and things like that. It's becoming harder and harder to teach them how to walk up to somebody, shake their hand, have a dialogue. I don't know how important that is for your workforce, but I'm thinking that having somebody who's a good communicator is great when you're having to communicate with trainers, with horsemen, with track management, things like that, where as a track superintendent, you may not be able to do that all the time, sending a deputy to be able to do that kind of thing. Touch on that, if you will, for a little bit. How important would that be?
Well, again, communication. So yeah, you need to be able to relate to a trainer. And yeah, I mean, to me, you need to have a little background. I mean, if you've got horse background, that makes it easier because then they can relate to the terminology with horses and maybe whether the track's deep and, you're seeing the hind end soft tissue injuries or the track's hard if you're trying to work through an issue. I think that just comes with experience, but I mean, I think the basics can be taught. And then obviously, education until you get out, you take that and you transfer it over to the real work world and grow from there. But I think it can be definitely taught. But again, that's communication, which is, not easily taught. I mean, some people communicate much better than others. So.
Again, the communication is a big part, willingness, just the willingness to work in all weather conditions. We run into that a lot because there's a lot of days the heat index is 105 and there's other days that, the wind chills, below zero and you still have a job to do, and the willingness to get out and do it, it's big. The willingness to just come to work that day. We have a lot of, we're in charge of the snow removal of the property as well. And it's amazing. You hire a lot of employees and it's like you get 2 inches of snow on the ground and they're calling off because they can't make it to work when that's their main function is just come in and help, get the property cleaned up and ready to go. So I would say willingness to do a job.
One final question, and then I'll open it up for the audience questions. One thing we thought about when we were discussing this program, how important is it for your employees to hold a commercial driver's license or not? Do you require that for all your workers or one or two of them, or,
Well, that's the beginning. Well, that's a problem you have right in the beginning with the HR when they apply for a job as a background check. We have a lot of employees that come in or potential candidates that are applying for a job that you're operating equipment and they do not have a valid driver's license. So, there is a lot of time spent in the interviewing process. A week will go by, 2 weeks go by, and you find out, well, they don't have a driver's license. So it's like, it's just wait. So yeah, there is a lot of hurdles you have to jump to try to get the right person for the job to begin with.
Yeah, CDL isn't a necessity for us. We do have one dump truck I think we own that occasionally. I do have a couple of guys with a CDL. The water trucks obviously do not go on the road. They're not tagged. If we ship them anywhere, they go on a low buoy. So a CDL, it is a good thing to have. I mean, but it's not a necessity from our end. Obviously, we need guys that can drive those trucks, but the actual commercial driver's license for the road like I said, it's a benefit because we do have one dump truck that occasionally we will pick things up in.
Okay. All right. On that point, let me open it up for questions from the audience. Hopefully you'll have a lot of them, or if not, we've answered everything else, but any questions from anybody? Yes, go ahead.
My name's Javier, and it's worked pretty well for me that when I see a good prospect, actually there's one now that works with me in Canterbury, and we finish our meet the 30th of September. Then he's going to go with Alfredo to Keeneland. And I think it's very important. And I wish he would go to fairgrounds with Pedro so he can see different racetracks and learn different things to do. Because it's not always sunshine and rainbows at one racetrack, or maybe there is, but then there's some tough days or tough things to do in different ones. So it's really great taking them to different racetracks and me getting feedback on how bad or how well they're doing. That seems to be working good, and I hope I can get some more. But I think the best thing is to have him see his surroundings, like Jamie was saying, where it's wet, where it's dry, the inside rail, the outside. If you can focus on different surroundings instead of like watching TV, like it's not like watching TV. You have to really pay attention to what you're doing out there. Stop if you see a rock, and definitely stop if you see a shoe. So we need somebody that has that can see and feel those things. And I've been very fortunate that I also have George. So with me and George, I think we have about 60 years experience. Is that George? George, hello. How many years have you been the tracks? 20? Geez, he's older than me too, though. But anyway, yeah, it's a great working relationship, and we're getting some young guys, and both of us together work with them, and we want to send them to different racetracks. Hopefully, we can get some great superintendents that have the heart for it. So that's all I can say. Thank you.
Good points, Javier. Thank you. All right, any other questions before we kind of wrap things up? I don't know how we're doing on time. Hopefully we're okay. Oh, okay.
What about doing any agronomic from grass and like turf course experience on this? Because, you know, I've got a couple of guys on my turf crew that and myself even I, you know, would love to have some more agronomic experience, you know, from managing grass types and things like that. So that would be important because I know that's a big part of this.
So again, the question was agronomics. Did we consider that as well? Yes, we did. We offer in our program or at college turf management type of classes, but we wanted to kind of really start on the basic level and then build from there, because I think that you know creating too expansive of a program that takes too long cost, if somebody's coming from out of state, we have to look at housing, tuition, things like that. So we wanted to kind of start small and then expand as we go. If this is better suited to be a 4-year degree program or a 2-year associate's degree program, that would be great. But I think it's wiser to start as a workforce training certificate program and then build as we need it, because we need to know how many students would enroll, what the job prospects are, the pay, and things like that. And then also raising awareness. But absolutely, I think, any experience working with turf grass or agronomics would be vital for sure. Anything else on that? Going back, personal history here, I know how important the job you all do, because the first track I worked at, anybody here from back east, I was Garden State Park. So unfortunately, I've opened and closed a lot of racetracks in my career, but my first boss was Bob Quigley, who had started the Meadowlands, Garden State Park, Atlantic City, and I came out of the University of Arizona, worked for him at the new Garden State Park when it opened. And one night we were walking the grounds and he said, "You know what the 2 most important jobs at the racetrack are?" And I said, "Well, the track general manager." He said, "No." He said, "The maitre d' in the turf club, because it takes care of all the big bettors, and the track superintendent, because if one of those 2 people messes up, it's going to cost us a great deal of money in handle. And that's what generates our business. You mess up on the track surface and we have to cancel racing. That's a multi-million-dollar problem that we now have." And that's always stuck with me, because that's the critical part of this whole business we're in, is that, every single day you have to have a track that's safe for racing. And, I don't think you guys get credit enough for that, in fact. So,
Hey, Remi, you want to light up?
but thank you all very, very much.